Hello and welcome to another episode of the Delightfully Devilish podcast. I am your host, Vishal Hussain, as we're going to do something a little different today as I review the film Top Gun Maverick that I saw in theaters twice now. The first night, you go to the movies, you take it in, you enjoy the show, but something about film has become unenjoyable in the theaters. People come in, they talk, they're on their phones. The attention span for people is just, it's so small. And as a film enthusiast, somebody who truly appreciates cinema, loves movies. Anybody who knows me knows I have a massive collection of films, massive blockbusters, indie films. I love old films. I love new films. It doesn't matter. It could be a rom-com. It could be an action movie. It could be a film noir, a detective. Doesn't matter. I absolutely love film. And the film going experience has been ruined by people. It's annoying as hell. There's, as I mentioned, people talking for Top Gun. I had a guy kicking at the back of my chair the entire movie. Stupid douchebag. Just, pissed me off the entire time. So, you go to enjoy the movies and people are really ruining it. And, the pandemic has made people even bigger assholes than they were before. So, very frustrating to go to sometimes, especially with the talking. I can't stand people, having a full-on conversation behind me or around me. Just let me enjoy the film in peace. And, Tom Cruise, for all he is as a weird guy outside the screen, outside the film world, the guy that you see in public, everybody knows he's a very strange guy, but, he appreciates a good cinematic experience, and he makes his movies for cinema. So you go there to enjoy it, and unfortunately, jerks take away the experience from you. And, I'm sure Tom wouldn't appreciate people coming to his movie to not, enjoy it and just sit there and chit chat. I mean, behind me, the group of people were, it's one thing to talk to the person next to you, whisper something, but, to yell across two rows, it's so infuriating. So, I went into this movie, the reviews were incredible. I was 2 years old in 1986 when the first film came out, and I must have seen it when I was 5. Everybody my age, from that 80 to 90 range, has seen Top Gun, has pretty much loved Top Gun, loved the cheesiness of Top Gun, the homoeroticism of that film, the beach volleyball scene, iconic. You absolutely love things like that, the dog fighting, the fighter planes, all that stuff. The F-14 Tomcat was my favorite airplane as a kid because it just looks so cool, and Tom made it so cool. So, I went into this movie with a lot of expectations as somebody who loved the first film. And, it's always tough when a movie comes out so far into the future after the first one. And what can I say about Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise and the director of the film? They did a tremendous job with this movie. They did not disappoint, and I think it's a better film than the original Top Gun. The cheese has been pretty much expunged completely from it. The homoeroticism's been dialed down a little bit. The actors, lots of unknown actors, just like in the first one. Some of those guys ended up going on to become big names. Anthony Edwards in ER, and then Tim Robbins made an appearance in that film as Merlin. So a lot of fun, lesser known actors then who went on to become stars. And the same thing in this case, save for Miles Teller, who plays Goose's son, Brad Bradshaw, aka call sign Rooster. I would have called him Gander. That would have been funny to me, Goose and Gander, but maybe that's just me showing my age with dad humor. So, I really enjoyed this film. Miles Teller put in a tremendous performance as a tortured young man. living in the shadow of his father. And, of course, Goose tragically passes away in the first film. And this has a tremendous ensemble cast. Some people just kind of shoehorned in there. Ed Harris, in there for a blip, not really sure what his purpose was, but, he was there to get Tom Cruise on his journey. Jon Hamm, who's handsome as all hell and funny too. It's very irritating. You should be either one or the other. You can't be both. But Jon Hamm, really just kind of shoehorned into this film. Didn't really, they could have got anybody else in this movie. I'll touch on that, later on in the spoiler section. But it was one of those things that Jon Hamm just kind of in there. Jennifer Connelly, she's, again, I'll get into this in spoilers. She's in the movie. Don't really know why she's in there, but she is. So, if you love film, if you love spectacle, this is a film that you have to see in IMAX. It's such a tremendous experience. Some scenes were shot in IMAX, so you'll notice the aspect ratio change. You really know when the IMAX scenes are there because it fills up the entire screen without the black bars at the top and the bottom. So if you are going to go see this movie, and I recommend 1000% that you should, go see it in IMAX. Do yourself a favor. So, I can't say enough about this movie, the cast, the directing, the action, just start to finish, absolutely tremendous. So if you're on the fence about it, don't be. It has my, what I like to call certified Vish rating. So it's 100% certified Vish, and you're really going to enjoy this. And try and go in a quieter theater when you're booking your tickets. Look for something with fewer people so that they can't really ruin the experience for you. And that's all I can say about non-spoilers for this film. In terms of spoilers, and I'll give you guys a second here if you haven't seen it to turn this off, but moving into spoilers, this movie opens with Tom Cruise. He's working on a project. It's called Dark Star. It's kind of like a Blackbird airplane. He's fighting for manned pilots in the plane, saying that, drones aren't going to be, automatic planes aren't going to be the future. There's too much variables in there that can cause missions to go wrong. So Ed Harris is kind of the foil to that in the beginning of the movie. And, he wants the project shut down, the Dark Star project, because it's taking up too much money and it's not worth it. It's not reaching the Mach 10 that they're trying to get to, even though, they were on schedule and what have you. But, that's just the way to get Tom Cruise from A to B. So what ends up happening in this film is that, he goes to Dark Star, crashes the plane, but gets to Mach 10. Ed Harris moves him over to the Top Gun Academy because his buddy Iceman from the first film, again, reprising his role, Val Kilmer. And, he's really the heart of this picture when you go to think about it, is Val Kilmer. He Tom Cruise has internal conflict. Maverick's a guy that plays by his own rules. You don't really see him as a guy that could be a teacher in the first film, and he's absolutely not that in the second movie. So, Iceman, Val Kilmer, who's gone through a lot of health problems, cancer, he had a tracheotomy, he can't speak anymore. He was brought into this film, though, because Tom Cruise said, listen, I am not making this movie without Val Kilmer. And it was the right decision. It was so great to see Val. As a fan of Val Kilmer, whether it's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Tombstone, Top Gun, Batman Forever, I've been a real big fan of his. Willow as well. So it was so nice to see him, and it chokes you up inside because you see this man who, acting is what he loved. He has that amazing documentary on Amazon where he, him and his brother documented right from 16 years old. This is all he knew. It's all he wanted to be. And to see that taken away from him is so sad. But, to see him in this movie, he can't speak. So, to get around that, they say he has cancer just like he did in real life. And, they get him to type stuff so that he can communicate with Tom Cruise that way. And one of the cool things that they ended up doing for this movie is digitally recreating his voice so that at the end there he could speak just a little bit, and they have a touching moment, and they hug, and it makes you laugh, it makes you cry. It's a really beautiful moment. So props to Val Kilmer for being in this film. I read an article where his daughter was saying they were so proud of him for what he did to come back and have the courage to do this movie, and really go for it, and he stuck the landing. Unfortunately, he does pass away, and that's one thing that they do in this movie is they explain people that are missing from the first movie as dying. So obviously we know Goose dies, and a little unknown Meg Ryan at the time played Goose's wife, and they have a son, and that's who Miles Teller is playing in this movie. So Meg Ryan didn't reprise her role, and if you're wondering why not, all they do is explain that, well, she died in between the two films. So Rooster has had a rough life, and you'd think that the conflict is that he's mad at Maverick for killing his dad, and in some part that holds a little bit true, but mostly it's because he pulled his papers from the academy and set his career back by 4 years, because Meg Ryan's character did not want him to become a pilot, and rightfully so. Her husband died that way, so they explain it that way, and that's the conflict between Maverick and Rooster is that he felt that he railroaded him, and in a way he did, but it was because it was a dying mother's last wish that he do that. So Maverick explains that I'm going to take the brunt of the ire of this kid, and I'm not going to let him resent his mother at the end. And I really like that they went that route instead of just having him harp on his dad, because he was a little kid in that film when he dies. Obviously not played by Miles Teller at the time, but it was a really good touch. And the reason they chose Miles Teller for this film is that no one's ever told him that he looks like Meg Ryan. No one's ever told him that he looks like Anthony Edwards. But apparently, according to Miles, when Tom Cruise met Miles Teller for the first time, he said, "Holy shit, you look like a perfect mix between Meg Ryan and Anthony Edwards." And Miles Teller's like, "Okay, I guess, sure, anything to take the role." And so they cast him in the movie, and he's a guy who's done some good stuff. Whiplash, he was great in, and he's phenomenal in this film for what he is. It's a good character, a tortured character, and I must say he does look a lot like Anthony Edwards did back in the day, and so I was really pleased with his casting. His foil in this movie is a guy that you may recognize. He was in The Dark Knight Rises, and he was a bit character in that movie. If you remember, when Bane comes into the what do you call it, the bank there, and tries to rob it, and he's one of the brokers there at the time, and played beautifully by Glenn Powell. That's the name of the actor, who's kind of the Iceman of this movie. Cocky, but he's kind of a mix between Maverick and Iceman, and he's the rival, he's the foil in this film to Miles Teller's Rooster character, and he does a great job, playing that smarmy, douchey kind of guy. He looks it. I don't know Glenn Powell, obviously, but did a great job in this movie. So they've got Monica Barbaro. Never heard of her before. She plays, they kind of tease sexual tension between Miles Teller and her, but I'm really glad that they didn't do that. The romance they kind of left between Tom Cruise and Jennifer Connelly, who's playing Penny Benjamin, and they make you think in this movie as if, like, you're supposed to know her from the first movie or something like that, but I went through the history of Top Gun, and she's nowhere to be mentioned, so I'm not really sure where they got this character from, but the way they explain it is that they've known each other for a while, and he kind of leaves her and comes back, so that's the romance. And they have a Take My Breath Away type scene where Lady Gaga has done the song this time, but it wasn't the same as that cheesy love scene in the original Top Gun. So I'm glad they kind of left that to a minimum. There wasn't a lot of romance in this movie, and it was just something you could go and enjoy. Fighter planes and what have you. So the sound was amazing. Everything in this movie was just incredible. And the one thing I was kind of disappointed by was, they brought back Val Kilmer, but they had so many options to bring back people from the first film, and they just didn't. Kelly McGillis, who played the love interest in the first film, does not return in this movie at all. And it's kind of a shit move on Tom Cruise's part and the directors, is that, she's 64 and she didn't fit the profile of what they're trying to do. And, Tom doesn't look 60 in this movie. They filmed it when he was, 57, 56, but he doesn't look that either, and he's got that charming smile that, really, it makes you smile. His smile. We all have a friend like that. My buddy Ravi, he's like that. It's just a cute smile that makes you smile in return. So Tom Cruise exudes that charm, and so Kelly McGillis, they asked her, why aren't you in this film? And she laughed it off. She says, I'm too old and too fat, and it's too bad that the industry makes women feel this way, because I think that's bullshit, but that's the route that they chose, and they replaced her with this Penny Benjamin character played by Jennifer Connelly, who is the wife of none other than Vision himself from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Paul Bettany, and she voices Friday in those films as well. So, she's just kind of, as I mentioned earlier in the non-spoilers, shoehorned in there. Jon Hamm plays, Maverick's boss in this movie. He's the guy that says, Iceman made us hire you. He's your guardian angel. I don't trust you. I don't really care for you. I know your history as a no pun intended Maverick, and he doesn't like him. But again, I question the casting of Jon Hamm in this film, because you could have had other guys from the first film. Tim Robbins could have been one of your instructors. I'm sure he's not in the best of shape, but these studios get actors into shape. They have so much money, disposable money, to get these actors in shape. So if Tim Robbins wasn't up to par, he could get there. I know Jon Hamm has the chiseled jawline and what have you, and very handsome man. But yeah, it's one of those things that I would have brought Tim Robbins, the actor who plays Iceman's co-pilot in that film, character by the name of Slider. He could have been the instructor, because Slider and Maverick have a little bit of beef from the first film as well, even though I guess it's kind of squashed at the end, but that was only squashed between Iceman and Maverick, so they could have still had Slider holding resentment. So, Hollywood, Merlin, there, Charles Parnell plays Adam Solomon Warlock Bates, and they could have had Hollywood in that film, in this one, and had him as Maverick's boss as well, who's not as hard on Tom Cruise as Jon Hamm's character is. So it would have been really cool to have all these people come back, and they could have done it because they're age appropriate. They would be instructors now at the Top Gun Academy, but they chose not to do it. So I'm very interested by that. The Hollywood standard is very, very strange for women, especially, like I said, I feel horrible for Kelly McGillis that they did that to her. But other than the cast, in terms of the plot, if you've seen the first Star Wars movie, and when I say the first Star Wars movie, I talk about 1977, A New Hope. This movie is basically Star Wars A New Hope. So what they've done is, it's against a nation that they don't mention a nation because, they really want to do well at the box office internationally. So they won't say like, oh, it's China or it's Russia or Iran or anything like that. So what they did was they just left it as a nameless country. You could just say it's the Empire because it's basically like that. A weapons grade nuclear facility that was in violation of a pact. So that's kind of Iran. But when you look at the terrain, it kind of looked like Russia. But they didn't explicitly name a place. So what they've done is that, they have to, Maverick has to come back. He has to basically be their ObiWan Kenobi and leave them lead them on a expedition to blow up this base where they're making nuclear weaponry, and they've got 3 weeks to do it. So they have to teach these kids how to fly, use their instincts instead of thinking too much, just get them to do. That's a big part of this film. And so it's very much like Star Wars: A New Hope in that they have a trench run to get to this this nuclear facility, and they go through it just like Luke does, and they have to stay low. And it was funny because in A New Hope, it's a gap of 2 meters wide on the Death Star, and in this it's 3 meters wide. So wow, from 2 to 3 they changed a little bit, but same thing, you got to fire a missile in there and then that'll blow up the station, and that's what they ended up doing. And they get there, and they think they've succeeded, but then it kind of goes haywire. Tom Cruise gets shot down, and then Rooster has to save him. And it drags on a little bit, but you can see what they were trying to do. But that's where kind of Rooster and Maverick make their peace with each other, is in that sequence, because Rooster saves Maverick's life and says, that's what my dad would want him to do. And the "talk to me, Goose," which is a iconic line in the first film, is brought back here. Maverick says it again. Rooster says, "Talk to me, Dad." And when he says that, his surrogate father, Maverick, comes through his headset and is like giving him instructions. So very much like how ObiWan Kenobi, communicates through the Force with Luke. And so, they get the job done, and then they have to get out. They get shot down, and then they have to steal a plane from this base from the this country. I'm going to call it the Empire, that they take a plane from, and of course it's an F-14 Tomcat, which was the plane from the first film. And they get out of there, and they're in a dogfight with other fighters from the enemy base. And just as it's about to look bleak for our heroes, just like how Darth Vader is aiming on Luke to shoot him out of the sky and kill him, Han Solo comes back and shoots Darth Vader off course, kills 2 of Darth Vader's henchmen, and gets Darth Vader off course. Hangman shows up and does the same thing, just as a missile's about to be fired, and he blows them up and gets them to come home. So, like I said before, the sequencing in this film, tremendous. The music, I was shocked that they only used Danger Zone once in the movie. I thought for sure 3 times. There was a bunch of instances that they could have used it, but I guess they didn't want to overdo it and kind of give way to new music in this. So it was, the Top Gun theme played in that one, and we'll outro with that theme so you remember what it sounds like. But yeah, the music was good. The instead of beach volleyball, they're playing beach football this time, but the song, again, not as good as "Playing with the Boys" by Kenny Loggins, which is such a hilarious song. And I absolutely love it, and I wish they'd used it again in this one. I'm glad they had more women in this movie, even though they did Kelly McGillis dirty. And overall, I'd give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. I never give a movie a perfect 10. No movie's perfect. Everything has its flaws. This does as well. Runtime is good. You're sitting at about 2 hours. My show started at 1:40. I was out of there by about 3:40. There are no end credits, so you don't have to stay for anything like that. Whether they're gonna make a third movie, Tom Cruise says, I don't know. He's got the 2 Mission Impossibles that are supposed to serve as a finale for that movie. Part 1 comes out next year, and Part 2 the year after. So will he make Top Gun 3? Based off of the success of this film, I'm going to say yes, they are going to make it, and I hope they do make it. With technology being as advanced as it is, the dogfighting scenes are amazing. And, Tom Cruise did a lot of his stunts in this one. They put him, the way they film it is he's in the passenger seat, but it looks like he's the pilot. And Tom Cruise wanted all his actors, so Glenn Powell, Danny Ramirez, Miles Teller, Monica Barbaro, they all had to do like intense flight training to be a part of this film, and they're all in airplanes, but they are sitting in the back while a licensed Navy pilot is flying the plane. So they went through the rigors of this film to train for it, everybody did a great job. And, you know, Tom Cruise wanted to fly like the Blackbird, and the Navy said, absolutely not. There's no way you're flying this plane. It's way too expensive. And, you know, for a film, we're not going to let you do it. But Tom Cruise is crazy. You know, at the end of the film, he takes Jennifer Connelly on a plane ride. It's Tom Cruise's own plane. And you can see that he's genuinely flying her around, and she's loving it. So, you know, props to Tom Cruise, who, you know, has put his personal life, kind of hidden it after that crazy spell that he had in the early 2000s. And, you know, he's just focused on the acting, and you enjoy the film. You have to separate the actor from the person. And he's a weird guy, but, you know, he loves film and has put together a really great film here. And I would wholeheartedly recommend it. So here's looking forward to Top Gun 3. And please, if you haven't seen this movie, go to your local cinema. Cinema's dying. As I mentioned, you know, as a film buff, that makes me very sad. So please go and see this movie. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. As you know, I did say that this was going to be a devil-centric podcast, but sometimes we like to switch it up and do something different. And film is something very near and dear to my heart. So as we move on, we'll do, you know, lots of Devil's conversation, but also TV shows, movies. You know, ObiWan Kenobi is streaming right now. Once that ends, I'm going to do a full review on that show as well. And I've got a Devil's podcast coming up as well. So for those who really like, you know, the New Jersey Devils, and there's not a lot of you other than my message board buddies, shout out to everybody who, you know, gave it a listen, and really appreciate your support. And we're going to keep this going. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So anybody who knows me knows I can go on and on and on. So thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on